The protests that have erupted around the world have shown that people everywhere are angry and frustrated because very little positive change has occurred to improve the lives of people of color. Looking back at how far we've come since the 1930s or 40s or 60s or whatever has become a way to avoid looking at the glaring disparities in education, in healthcare, levels of poverty, and treatment by the police for all people of color. The historical roots of racism in the United States are really deep. The notion that Blacks counted as 3/5 of a person is deplorable, and the scar of that remains an overlooked piece of our history that's been a blight on our country for centuries. It saddens and angers me that through inequitable policies and the uneven application of policies, the laws of our country have fostered racism in so many ways. So we must now take action. So the question is, what can Santa Fe Community College do? Number one, we can speak up and we can address instances in racism that we see around us every day. We can question our biases. White privilege is real, and we can't dismantle it without calling it out. We must examine the roots of our assumptions about race and actively listen to the concerns and the stories of all minority groups. We must educate our staff and our students and our whole community about the historic roots of racism in the United States. This can be transformative, and it truly does help to dispel ignorance. We need to embrace the SFCC values that focus on people, social responsibility, and integrity. We must look at the injustices and inequities that we perpetuate every day through some of our own practices and policies in testing and other academic matters. There's been indisputable research on racial biases in standardized testing. We can't rely on these to determine the fate of Black, Hispanic, and Native American students. In doing so, we can stop perpetuating the subtle and not so subtle ideas that some people are not as valuable or not as capable of other people. I'm hopeful that we are on the brink of some real change. I'm tired of hearing that we shall overcome someday. I think that day needs to be now. And I'd like for all of you now to join me in a moment of silence. I would now like to introduce Dr. S.J. Miller, Associate Professor of Teacher Education at Santa Fe Community College. Dr. Miller has been instrumental in putting this event together and in bringing us all here today. So I thank Dr. Miller profusely for all of the work in doing this. So Dr. Miller. Muted.
SJ, yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, President Rowley, for your wonderful introduction and your inspiring words. First, I want to thank the Santa Fe Community College Library. Valerie Nye has also been instrumental in putting this together. I'm going to go over some norms for technology in a moment, but I do want to let everybody know that this is being videotaped and it's going to be live streamed. It's currently being live streamed on the Santa Fe Community Library website. And it will be later used for press for our own website. So if you're uncomfortable being videotaped, please make sure you turn off your camera throughout the presentation. So I want to begin with a concept of white privilege, which we're all probably very familiar with. So I'm going to ask you to hold your hand up to yourself. If you're comfortable putting your hand out, that's fine. So here we go. Put a finger down if you've ever been called a racial slur. Put a finger down if someone has crossed the street to avoid you. Put a finger down if someone has clutched their purse or their wallet when they're near you. Put a finger down if you've ever had to teach your child how not to be killed by the police. Put a finger down if you've ever been stopped or detained by the police for no valid reason. This is white privilege. I want you to know today that there's a shutdown in academia and by STEM in honor of the Black Lives Movement. And they've asked everybody to stay off technology and to put this work into social action. So to honor that, we're going to move into social action by the end of today and think about action steps for moving forward. So first of all, today is day 16 of the protest and gatherings, peaceful gatherings since the murder of George Floyd. Today, tomorrow, and from now on, we are going to make an ideological shift that stands on the shoulders of Martin Luther King and all of the freedom fighters who fought so hard for us to be here today. Today, we call upon the memories of Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner's Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Paul Robeson, Frederick Douglass, Nelson Mandela, and so many others. Today, we stop participating in all forms of structural and systemic racism and the vast prejudices that are smog in the air. Today, we move from righteous indignation into healing. Today, we commit. Today, we act. Today, we persist. Today, we share in a common space of compassion for ourselves and others. Today, we heal. Can everybody see what's on the screen?
You just took it down, I think, SJ. So if you can share your screen again.
Yeah. Am I able to? Yeah, and am I able to advance from this place?
Yes,
though?
you can.
Okay. So I want to start off with a quote by Martin Luther King, who says, "When silence becomes betrayal, there comes a time when silence becomes betrayal." The objectives then for today, oops, excuse me. It won't let me advance.
Can you click on the very bottom left? There are some arrows, I think, down there.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just go over them from my end.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Today, our objectives are to share our feelings and concerns and to move into considerations for action steps. A couple of norms that we want to keep in mind is to focus on ideas and not people, to listen reflectively, to lean in with compassion and an open mind, and to respond gracefully. What we're going to do is have the chat up. If you put your name in chat, we're going to assume you'd like to have a question. Val and I are going to moderate the chat. So please, if you're called on to talk, to limit your comments to about no longer than 3 minutes. A couple of reminders, please mute your mic if you're not speaking. And we will go in order of the questions and comments in the chat. Your mics will be unmuted when you speak. And please keep in mind too that we don't want to see any disparaging comments. If we see somebody join in the Zoom, we know that people are Zoom bombing, that person will be immediately muted. And with that, we want to turn the conversation over to you.
So if you have comments or would like to share experiences or things you've been thinking about, just say you would like to speak in the chat box and we will turn on your mic. Great. Megan is going to speak. I will turn on her mic in just a moment.
Thank you, Val. Thank you, SJ, for coordinating and hosting us today for this really important and vital conversation. Sorry, it's emotional. Okay, but sorry. Okay, so specifically to SFCC, and as one of the co-chairs for the President's Diversity Advisory Committee, I'm really interested in hearing people's thoughts and ideas around action items. The things that came up from our retreat for things that are actionable on the campus, the biggest theme for us was bullying. And I think that bullying is definitely a kind of abuse that exists and thrives in silence. And so I'm specifically curious about people's experience with bullying and overcoming bullying in terms of finding a way to remain better connected to one another and create pathways to understanding each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Anyone would like to respond to that, please just say you would like to talk about bullying. If you have another topic you would like to talk about in the chat, just let us know. We're trying to organize the conversation a little bit, but so having information about what you would like to talk about is helpful in the chat. Thanks. Aamna is going to have her mic turned on in just a moment. All right.
Hi.
You're ready to go.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, this is
you.
Aamna Nayyar. I take care of the dental department here on campus, and I'm working here since 2002, started as adjunct, and since 2003 January, I'm the director of the dental department. Just wanted to share about bullying. Yes, it happened with me here on campus some years back, and I want to thank Scientific Community College. The leadership at that time took immediate action and they supported me. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment from Sarah Snyder, and I will turn on her mic here. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, thanks. I've been an adjunct with SFCC for on and off for quite a few years now. And I was wondering if people in different departments might take a moment to talk about curriculum shifts they might be thinking about for either their classes or their degree programs.
Any comments about curriculum? Just would like to talk about curriculum in the chat and we'll continue. Okay, I have one. Juan muted?
This is Amy. I'm actually Juan's wife, so I'm using his account.
Okay.
But I wanted
Amy, thank you.
Thank you. I think that curriculum is actually a really important place to begin to have some of the important conversations around white privilege and racism. And I wonder, I think that it is taking place at the community college, but I wonder how the public schools, Santa Fe Public Schools or any other school districts can start to be brought into this conversation so that there can be structured curriculum delivered to students at an earlier age. Because I think that that does go hand in hand with bullying, but it starts to get to the root of a lot of issues sooner than later. And also, I think beginning to explore white privilege sooner than later is very, very important as well. You know, not coming to an awareness of it in your 20s or 30s when so many ideologies have formed, as opposed to coming to it at a much younger age.
So it's
So
a great,
Yeah,
question
a question. Is there a way to partner with the schools or with PED to start to have these conversations?
I'll wait for somebody to respond. Until then, Jenny Landon has some comments to make about curriculum too. So you are unmuted. Oops. You're unmuted, Jenny, I believe. Jenny, I think you can unmute yourself at this point. There you go.
How
Yeah.
about now? Can you guys hear me
Good.
now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm Jenny Landon, and I'm the Dean for the Schools of Fitness Education and Sciences, Health, Engineering, and Math at the college. I actually wanted to make two comments. I want to speak just briefly to the question that was just asked. And I would say yes. I think that this is a great opportunity and the perfect time to partner with our community in terms of the public education department, the higher education department, to be able to expand on what we do in these areas and to include more curriculum around equity issues and disparities. So I think that we will definitely take that opportunity. At least I will say in my schools, I will definitely do that. And then I also wanted to speak to the earlier question about curriculum. And I think this is really timely. You know, in a lot of our healthcare programs, we have some curriculum already integrated in terms of social justice and disparities and inequalities. But I think that this gives us an opportunity as an institution, just like we have essential skills outcomes for higher education purposes across the state and program learning outcomes. I think it's time for us to take a stand and add an essential skill outcome in terms of being able to address these issues and to be proactive. The last thing I want to share is that, you know, recently my nursing education director was part of a national survey that looked at social justice issues and curriculum within the nursing curriculum. And they're going to be actually releasing a national article about this. And it has prompted us to think about how purposefully are we including these very essential knowledge and education around what we can do to make sure that we are standing up for others and being aware of these social justice issues. And you know, the last thing I'll say is that our school has had training around such things as microaggressions, which I think has been great, but I think it's time to expand that and to include those kinds of trainings into our curriculum. So thank you for this opportunity.
Great. And Juan is going to speak next. Juan, you're unmuted.
Hello, do you hear
Yes,
me?
hi, yes.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm a teacher at Albuquerque for Albuquerque High School, social studies, special education. And I just wanted to address, somebody brought up about the curriculum. I'm not sure if you guys have heard already, but we can partner up or, you know, with the indigenous wisdom. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's like, I've gotten, I guess I've attended workshops at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. They have curriculum through the NMPED based on a Native perspective. As well, we can do it with other ethnic groups through an African American perspective, a Chicano perspective. But they have that. You can download it from the website. You can get it from the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center or from the NMPED. If you guys would like some outside the box type of, curriculum to teach children. As well, I just wanted to address about bullying. I come from California originally, and one thing I did notice here was an alarming rate of racism toward Native Americans and Mexicans. And I'm sure that's like a deep-rooted history, cultural thing going on. And it's based on colonization, myself, being Mexican, I've experienced the racism. So, I mean, to call it out all the time in my classroom, I got to do it. So, that's one thing. It's, racism based on colonization. Another thing is also, I would like to call out colorism within groups. Like Mexicans, a lot of times are racist or discriminate darker looking Mexicans. And I've heard that happens around the world, Japan, in Africa. So, I just wanted to let that, say that. Thanks.
Juan, somebody is asking if you can share the link to the resources you mentioned in the chat, or if you would like to share them afterwards. I'll be emailing everyone who's attending. Either way.
Sure, no
Okay.
problem, I will. Thank you.
Sarah has some comments to make about white privilege. And let me see. You're unmuted, Sarah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There is something that I've heard from, a lot of white people that I know, which it seems to me is a huge barrier to kind of understanding the context of these protests response. One thing, unfortunately, I hear a lot of is, and I'm sure we've all heard this, and, understand I'm not condoning violence and destruction and that sort of thing, but a lot of people I know are really frustrated about the protest response. Well, that's just so, I've even heard some people say, well, it's just so uncivilized, that's just not the proper way to go about it. And my response has been, hey, contents under pressure will explode. This is just such a deep rooted problem. And I think one of the barriers for, people like myself, part of that white privilege of understanding the context of all this obviously isn't a new phenomenon. And a lot of people I've talked to, not very much face to face, obviously, more online. But they understand, from a timeline perspective, oh yeah, I understand about slavery and, and hundreds of years and this, that, and the other. But I don't know. I guess my question is, how can we help people? Anybody have any ideas on how we can help people understand just the systemicness and deep rootedness, other than just that surface, I'll just say intellectual understanding of, well, yes, we know. Someone actually posted, I thought this was pretty effective, a timeline. They had it was a visual timeline, and they showed, here's the civil rights movement here. And here's the my camera screen isn't wide enough to show it, but just showing, when these kinds of injustices, and that's such a euphemistic term, injustice and oppression have gone on for so long. I think, bottom line, I think a lot of people don't understand the depth of that. What are some ways, obviously dialogue and things like this, what are some ways we can, help people understand that? I'm not sure if I expressed that very well, but if there needs to be some clarification, I'm happy to try and clarify that a little more.
Thank you, Sarah. If somebody has comments on that, I know these are things that we've talked about a bit about in PDAC. And if there are members of PDAC who would like to speak a bit about this, that would be great. Okay, Camilla is going to speak, so let me get her mic on here. Camilla, you're unmuted, and you can unmute yourself now. There you go.
Sarah, I really appreciate that question, because the hard part is it clearly is continued dialogue. And the problem with the dialogue is it's hard. It's hard dialogue because our feelings are involved and there are disclosures about how we feel and people get defensive, etc. But it really is that dialogue. And what's important that you bring up this timeline, and I just want to share this because it is the conversation. It's being able and willing to let someone know how something has made someone feel, but more so it's being able to open up and be responsive to how a person has been experienced something. There was a timeline that was provided to me by one of our board members on the foundation, who his name is Regis Pecos. He's brilliant. He's a Princeton graduate, but he's also a Cochiti Pueblo member. And Regis, I went to a project that they did, put a timeline of when Native Americans were oppressed and not allowed to do their use their symbols, do their dances, and conduct their prayers. They were not allowed to do that on their own land, starting in the late 1800s into the 1940s. During that period, and he put this timeline on the wall, during that period, a very well-meaning woman, the Zia sun symbol, when we became a state, and recommended that that be the symbol for the state flag. And the Zia Pueblo people were not allowed to use that symbol. To this day, unless I have permission to use that and I'm stuck with it on my license plate, I won't touch the Zia sun symbol. It is not mine to touch. It was provided to the state, and we love our Zia sun symbol, which is sadly this past month in May twisted into a swastika. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
To understand in that timeline that Native people were not allowed to use their symbols and dance their dances, and it became our state flag, is egregious. We have to be willing and open to communicate those things that are problematic. That's great, we can communicate them, but we also have to be receptive. And I struggle every day in trying to understand how and what I can do. And I think that's all, I can't say that's all we can do. As Jenny and I were talking earlier, we can all try to do our best, but to have these conversations about timelines and where the hegemony is upside down, like why are certain people in control and valued more, etc. I appreciate that question so much, and I really wanted to just give that example of the Zia sun symbol was taken at a time Natives were not even allowed to use their own symbols.
Yeah, one group I'm involved with, the Santa Fe Concert Band, we also only seek permission from official sources. I don't know who that's from. I don't handle PR, but we try to be very respectful of that if we're going to use that. And it's really frustrating when other organizations, might not do that, because that is important. And that's something I had to learn and realize. I've only been here 3 years. So, but anyway, yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
I just want to say, SJ asked if I can provide the timeline. This was something that Regis Pecos put up literally along a whole wall of an auditorium room. I mean, putting the timeline of how and where egregious actions had been taken against Native American people in New Mexico. And I don't have that. It wasn't something we were handed. It's not a slide. It was something that was literally wrapped a room. So I apologize for not being able to provide that to the group.
Thank you. There are some recommendations in chat about films and other places where timelines might exist. And so thank you all for providing that. And if people have other links they would like to provide in chat about timelines, that would be great. Kate McCahill is going to be unmuted here. And Kate, you can unmute yourself now. Go ahead.
Thanks, Val. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see you all. And I really, really appreciate you organizing this, SJ. Hi, Val's cat. So what I wanted to talk about was, first of all, I really, really appreciate the effort for this conversation, and I hope we can have more of them, because I think this is one way to address a lot of the problems that are we're seeing right now. And I think, right now we don't get to collaborate with each other as much, and so this is so valuable and important. I really appreciated the comments too about curriculum. I'm in the English department, and there's 8 of us now. There's 7 of us now. We collaborated last year to choose new textbooks for Comp 1 and Comp 2. Those are classes that changed significantly with state updates. So we modified the textbooks, and we were really proud of ourselves for the process that we went through to choose new books that we thought representative of our students. We went through about dozens of books that Shuli Lambden aggregated, and we looked at the tables of contents, and we counted how many white writers, how many women, how many writers of color, how many Hispanic writers, and we ended up choosing based on those figures. But our department is 8 people, and it's all 7 people now, and it's all white people. We lost Andy Lovato, and now it's all white people. And we do have several openings in our department. I don't know when they're going to be filled. Right now, it doesn't look like we're filling anything anytime soon, but those positions need to be filled with, in my opinion, Hispanic people who look like our students and can relate to our students in a deeper way. I mean, I think curriculum is a great place to start. These discussions are a great place to start, but the change that we need needs to happen in, I think, a much deeper way. I mean, I think personally, I have a lot of trouble with our department being so different demographically than our student body, and I feel bad. I mean, I've thought, what can I do? Should we sacrifice our job? I mean, I've thought about many different things, but I think we have to be willing to give some stuff up and spend some money to attract people, and it needs to be about having people in our shoes. I mean, I think if you look at our faculty body demographic isn't representative of our students. Oh, and one other thing that I wanted to add was I really like the idea of partnering with other organizations. IAIA is also a gold mine. They have tons of resources. They're an amazing program. They have amazing people. We work with them a lot with the Santa Fe Literary Review already, and I would really be happy to discuss any plans to work with them more so that we are more informed and we have a lot more resources at our disposal. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, Kate. Megan would like to speak a bit about PDAC and the things that PDAC is doing. And Megan, your mic is now unmuted.
Thank you. So just to SJ's encouragement for us to identify things that we're going to act on going forward, I wanted to talk just a couple seconds about some of the things that we talked about in the President's Diversity Advisory Committee, some concrete things that we can do. And I'd mentioned it to Becky yesterday that perhaps PDAC can take over the Santa Fe Community College Professional Development Day for the spring 2021 semester. When PDAC was meeting, we had a lot of support for that, and I think it would be a really good opportunity for us to make some focused effort on professional development resources factored on diversity. And I forgot the other thing that I was going to say, so I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. Oliver Middleton had some comments to make, and your mic is unmuted if you would like to speak.
Thanks. My name's actually Erin Middleton. We share with 5 kids and my family, and it just goes with bed at last. I come from being a school board member at Jemez Valley and then switching to being at central office at Los Alamos Public Schools. And the things that I struggle with in being in far out districts that aren't connected to Santa Fe or Albuquerque is raising the awareness of people. We're not connected. We don't have curriculum. We don't have PED that comes out and gives us training. And one of my questions is there a platform for helping, always presenting at the School Board Association, raising awareness of school board members who may have 4 years and may be able to put some of these forward in hiring decisions? Is there a way to work with the existing structures that the districts are using? There's the NM- process. You have to put goals in, especially those districts that are struggling. Can we put goals? Can you not quite cookie cutter, but something that would help plug into something that somebody's already doing. And the same thing with equity councils. I don't know if any of you are familiar with equity councils. I've been to all of the training and I'm one of the leads in our district. And getting the members to know what curriculum is really tricky. So how can we leverage some of the things that are already going on in districts that already have people assigned to, and maybe raise awareness with plugging into resources?
Thank you. Since K through 12 education has been something that a lot of people have commented on with questions, are there people who have some expertise or some connection to PED who might be willing to speak about this? Ideas for sharing curriculum and communicating with each other beyond this moment.
Val?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, back to, and I know your name wasn't Oliver, Aaron. One of the things that we might want to think about, which I'm happy to spearhead with you perhaps and some of the other educators on the call, would be to create a New Mexico education collective on Facebook. There's a higher ed collective that is on Facebook that has, I think, over 8,000 people right now sharing resources. And there's no reason we couldn't do that within New Mexico and actually streamline it as, you know, pre-K, K through 5, and just create a massive resource for everybody to use. So let's connect afterwards.
Great. Dawn is going to speak. Dawn, you're unmuted. I think you can unmute yourself. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And I wanted to speak to Aaron. So there are many conversations happening right now, and I'm very involved with those dialogues at the state level, Aaron. And up until, you know, within the last couple of weeks, those dialogues have been focused on what's happening with K-12 and the pandemic and trying to get teachers, you know, good to go online and all of those. And so this conversation now shifting, there's a group of us, of deans and directors from across the state who meet monthly. And our next meeting, I'm glad to bring this idea forward. I think, you know, so much has happened even since, even in the last 2 weeks. And so this, I will say that it's always been a big priority in New Mexico. The last 3 months have really been focused on the pandemic, but I'm glad to carry this forward.
Thank you, Dawn. I think that will be really important, and to keep us all connected and how we can do this will be important. Sarah Snyder is asking specifically if there are SFCC students here. And Sarah is asking one of the questions that we hope to end our discussion today with, but would love to hear from students about hopes and needs going forward. So if there are students who would like to speak to that, please let me know in chat. Marisol, if you would like to speak, I can turn on your mic now. I've unmuted you, Marisol.
Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Sure. So I'm an alum from 2002, and my daughter will be a graduate in 2022. So 20 years difference. I believe in the foundations of the community college, but you know, racism for myself, being a child of immigrants in the 60s, started in the delivery room when they told my mother that she couldn't give me 2 names and she condensed Maria del Sol to Marisol. So this has very deep-rooted foundations within myself and my culture within my home. So I hope that moving forward with this focus group that we're participating in today, we get some positive outcomes and we empower our student body to not sit on the sidelines when they feel oppressed, for situations don't have to arise based on your civil liberties being attacked, but also you being attacked for having a voice when you have a different point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Janelle Johnson is going to speak next. And there has been some discussion here about the fish bowls that happened last semester, I believe, and I'm hoping somebody will be willing to speak about what those were and how they went, so everybody can have an understanding about them. I think they were really powerful. Janelle, you're unmuted at this point.
Hi, I've been participating in a lot of different virtual roundtables with professionals in the counseling community, all the way to the national level. And I guess I also participated in the fish bowls. I didn't as an observer, but that is a very powerful way to have students speak, basically by having a group of students in the center and the rest of the audience is around the outside. And people tag in and out of the fishbowl, but there are topics brought up that are concerning that students can talk about. But I guess what I wanted to bring up too was, I think it's really important that we should have avenues for people to have their voices heard. What I've been noticing a lot nationally is some of the engagement has been somewhat divisive. And I think as an educational institution, it's really important for us not to just say, you need to do something, but to acknowledge that some people they need an avenue for that. A college is a perfect place to provide that resource, whether it's like fish bowls, whether it's some kind of observant days, you know, coming out of your mental health counseling, that's what I'm doing here. I'm been a counselor at Santa Fe Community College for 20 years. So coming out of our area, we're always trying to end the stigma of, you know, mental health, and please people come forward and, you know, we want to help you. And I think it's the same somewhat for this. We need to end the stigma of being able to process what's going on, being able to speak up. You know, there's strength in numbers. We need to come together and give people ways to speak up. Not everyone is willing to make a sign and go protest. But again, this is very heartfelt for me as well. I'm a military brat. I've lived all over the world. So I guess I feel like we need to make a way for, you know, we need to give people ways that they can be heard, their voices can be heard, one, and two, that they can make a difference if they want to participate in that. That's what I would say.
Right, thank you. Emily Stern is asking about pathways for making some of these ideas happen. If somebody has comments about that, what our action steps may be, and I think that is how we want to conclude our meeting today, with ideas for action steps. So we'll be doing that in a moment. Is there anyone else who would like to talk before we wrap things up? Other ideas, other experiences, or things you would like to share? Belin is going to speak, and Belin, you're unmuted.
Hi, Val. Thank you for helping put this together, and thank you, SJ, Dr. Rowley, for putting this together too. And I want to say I appreciate all the conversations about needing to address the needs of Indigenous and our brown, Latino, and Latina peoples, and knowing that those are the communities that we predominantly serve. One of my concerns and with these last few minutes coming out of this meeting and this meeting being in response to the Black Lives Movement and anti-Blackness in higher education and in the world around us, is how much our conversations have decentered about the Black experiences in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and at our community college. So very publicly, how are we as a community college, as we lead into future actions, how are we going to denounce anti-Blackness at our institution? How are we going to move forward with aligning with Black Lives Matters and the Black Lives Matters movements? So, you know, it's important that we draw upon our own experiences as Indigenous, as Mexican peoples, as peoples from colors, from other colors, but how are we going to use our experiences to address anti-Blackness, and without putting the labor and efforts on the very few members in the Black communities in our communities. So this moment has been inspired by the Black movements and Black Lives Matter movement. How are we as an institution going to respond directly to that?
Thank you for that question, Belin. And again, I think we're going to address it at the end. SJ, are you keeping track of time? Do you want to start talking about these things now? There's a couple more people who have some remarks. One other person does, it looks like, if it's not time to move on to the wrap up yet. Juan, I'll unmute you again if you would like to speak. I think I understood that you wanted to speak in the chat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to say two things. One is, I mean, basically just one, but it's A, we got to decolonize ourselves, our own biases, look at the mirror and first of all, change ourselves, abolish that single story that we have that has been internalized for so many years since our birth and even before that. The other one is, you know, decolonize your environment, like start to research other perspectives. Again, like there's other stories, other worldviews in Africa and Mexico and Central America. We all do math differently. We all see everything differently. Some of us don't even need books to learn, you know? It's all through oral tradition. So we need to like stop this linear thought and begin to research and look at other people's worldviews and perspectives. And then perhaps maybe even connect that to how we see the world. Because what do we know about the world if we've never traveled it? What do we know about ethnic groups and the people if we haven't even lived amongst them? So we need to decolonize this single story and abolish that. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Nick, your mic is now turned on and you can unmute yourself when you're ready to talk.
Thanks, Val. Thank you, everyone. I wasn't going to say anything, but I know that I don't think I would be able to forgive myself if I didn't just share some of my thoughts with the group. You know, I would just like to focus on some positive observations that, you know, that I see with our community at SFCC in Santa Fe and in the state of New Mexico. First, you know, this subject is super important for all of us to really internalize and think about and really figure out how we can do better. We have to always be trying to do better, you know. It's that it's the promise of a more perfect union, a more perfect state, a more perfect college, and it's that inspired action of really just trying to always do better. In New Mexico, of course, we're a majority state, so I look at this issue a little bit, you know, different. I'm still called a minority in New Mexico. However, it's you know, that's awfully confusing for me because it is a minority majority state. I think that the cultures blend very well. While nothing is absolutely perfect, I love our state. I love our college because there is a focus and awareness and attention on the importance of a blended community and respecting a lot of different cultures that are present. I just really, I don't want to take too much time here. I just wanted to mention this for 2 minutes, but I'd like us to think about poverty and how that really affects a lot of the outcomes that we're seeing today. One of the biggest barriers to people accessing economic mobility is the subject of poverty. There are institutional barriers in place, as Dr. Rowley was mentioning earlier, one of them being in the educational institutions, but in our justice systems, in our law enforcement systems, in our political systems. The subject is great. It's broad. It's global. It's everywhere. And again, what can we do today? What can you and I do every day in our lives? Because the subject is so institutional, so systemic, and challenging with that. So, working at SFCC, I really think that it is so important for us to really focus in on, and I know the large, vast majority of us do, we focus on poverty. And we're focusing on education as a way to address poverty and that barrier to economic mobility. We are a workforce institution. A community college is focused on workforce. And I think that's so important in terms of lifting people up out of poverty. It's not the silver bullet, but it is a huge, huge component of it, where you can get people to have basic, the fundamental needs in the spectrum of needs to self-actualization. Shelter and food is a basic principle for people to be able to get to where we all want them to be and where they want to be. And so looking at our institution from that workforce perspective, and I have to be honest with you, I've heard at our institution that workforce is not the point. It's something other than that. While it isn't the point, while it's not the only point, it is a huge, huge component of it. And I think that is one way we can all really synergize and focus our attention on addressing one of the biggest root causes of a lot of the issues that we're facing with discrimination, people not being treated equally, equity, and that is that subject of lifting people up out of poverty. And I think at the college, we all have the opportunity of doing that every day. And so that's why, I work at SFCC and not at a 4-year research institution, because one of the biggest reasons is because of that, because we can really engage and focus in on addressing that issue of poverty for people. And while I could probably sit here and share my thoughts for several hours, I won't. But if I could just encourage you all to reflect on that, because that education and eliminating poverty is a huge step forward to fixing a lot of these societal ills that we're seeing in a lot of different areas. And this is a subject that's difficult for me to talk about as a Hispanic person in New Mexico. A lot of these conversations are difficult because of the fact that there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of generational trauma that is involved with certain groups of folks that sit here today. And And I think that that's just, you know, those are my thoughts. I just thought I'd share that with you all.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. We're just about out of time, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's a awesome way to end the conversation. And I put in a Google Doc, a place for everybody to fill in their name and how they want to move forward. And again, we'll compile those. I'm going to put up there a list of resources for the state and things that we can actually do within our own circle of influence. And I want to turn the conversation over to Becky for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, SJ. First of all, let me just say that the conversation today has been really, really, really heartening, even though some people have shared things that are really distressing and painful in a lot of ways. The fact that we could come together and have this conversation is really important, and I think is a really important first step, but it is just a first step. So I want to say that I am encouraged. I think obviously some of the actions that we're going to look at going forward will have to do with curriculum review, and you know that is a faculty concern, but it is something that we as an institution can encourage them and provide the resources for that to happen. I think, you know, Kate's comments really brought a lot of that to the forefront, and it's really important. So I thank all of you for that. We also obviously have a lot of training that we need to do. I don't think that training fixes everything, but I also don't think that we can do a lot of things without training first. It helps some people more than it helps others. We've all seen that in a whole lot of different instances, but it's something that we're going to do at a higher level than what we've done before, and in some different areas. And I want to say that, you know, I think everybody here acknowledges that the Black Lives Matter movement is a critical force in our world right now, and that's something that we espouse and that we're behind, and that we want to address those tenets going forward, and to proceed with a lot of the work that's being done there to really improve inequities in our world, and to really work on this problem of racial prejudice that our country has not been able to overcome. It gets a little bit more visible and then it fades away. And so the challenge for us now is to not let this moment just be one of those flashpoints that everybody gets worked up about it now, because, you know, we're able to focus on it more because we're home, and then it just kind of dissipates as we get back to our regular lives. We can't let that happen. And I think that there is a lot of will to not let that happen. So that is our challenge. And I want to just, you know, say really briefly about the comments that Nick made on poverty, and that is something that the college is working on. There have been efforts through our Title V grant, through the foundation, to address some of these issues. But the pandemic that we've just come out, that we're, still in, is really just making clear how dire those systemic challenges are. And we found that, you know, so many of our students of color did not have reliable internet access, didn't have a room of their own to study in or anything like that. And that makes everything more difficult. So we have to be not only aware of those challenges, but figure out ways to address those challenges in our college community and in the community at large. And those are our marching orders going forward. So with that, I again like to thank S.J. Miller for putting this together, Val Nye for keeping us on track and making sure everything proceeded really smoothly, and Laura Smith also for making sure that, you know, the traffic flowed smoothly. And I think this has been a terrific event, and I want to thank all of you for attending and for participating.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it back to SJ if you have anything you want to say.
Just remember that no action is too small, but inaction perpetuates these ideologies that continue to perpetuate violence. So do everything you can whether it's an email, a post, saying hello to somebody, treating everybody you come in contact with human dignity. Because remember, everybody is just like you, and everyone wants to be heard and loved and treated fairly. So again, I just want to thank everybody for coming today and for opening up and being so vulnerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll end the meeting. We will be sending out the resources and links to recordings of this event if you have people or students you would like to share it with. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.